The council chamber existed in a place between stars. It was a massive structure of crystal and light. Floating in the darkness of space were 3,000 alien civilizations gathered to decide the fate of worlds. Today, they would decide the fate of Earth. Ambassador James Foster stood alone on a platform of pure light. Around him, darkness stretched in every direction. Above, below, and on all sides, holographic faces stared down at him. 3,000 species. 3,000 judgments. Not one friendly face among them. The platform beneath his feet was called the Accused Circle. Foster had learned that name during his briefing. He had also learned that no species placed on this circle had ever left without punishment. Holographic images appeared around him, floating in the air like ghosts. Images of Earth, images of human soldiers. Images of war, conflict, and violence from throughout human history. The projections spun slowly, each one more damning than the last. A voice boomed through the chamber, so loud it seemed to come from everywhere at once. The translation device in Foster's ear worked overtime to convert the alien speech into English. Humanity stands accused. The voice belonged to High Chancellor Vryn, a being of pure energy contained within ceremonial armor that glowed blue and gold. Your species has violated the fundamental principles of civilized society. You have developed weapons of psychological warfare. You have trained soldiers in the art of creating fear. You have built an entire military doctrine around terror and intimidation. Foster remained silent. He had been warned not to interrupt. Your so-called special forces represent everything the Galactic Council has worked to eliminate from civilized space. Vryn continued. They are assassins, shadows, killers without honor who strike from darkness. The chamber erupted in sound. Clicks, whistles, hums, and roars from 3,000 different vocal systems. The translation device struggled to keep up. Foster caught fragments. Dangerous. Primitive. Must be contained. Another delegate rose to speak. This one was called Thal, a being covered in chitinous armor with 6 legs and eyes that glowed orange. We have seen species like yours before, human. They burn bright and violent, and they die young. But before they die, they take entire star systems with them. We cannot allow this. More voices joined in. A species that looked like living water. A species that resembled walking crystals. A species that was just a cloud of gas held together by electromagnetic fields. All of them agreed. Humanity was too dangerous to be allowed freedom among the stars. The evidence is clear, Vryn declared. Earth will be placed under containment protocol. A barrier will be erected around your solar system. Your species will remain there until you either evolve beyond violence or destroy yourselves. We will check on you in 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Foster felt his stomach drop. Earth would be a prison. Humanity would be alone in the dark, cut off from the galaxy, trapped like animals in a cage. He waited for silence. It took several minutes. When the chamber finally quieted, Foster spoke for the first time. His voice was calm, almost gentle. High Chancellor, with respect, I believe you are operating under a fundamental misunderstanding. Vryn's energy form flickered with what might have been anger. There is no misunderstanding, human. We have studied your military broadcasts. We have analyzed your training programs. We know exactly what your special forces are. Do you? Foster asked quietly. Because if you did, you would not fear them. You would be asking for their help. The chamber erupted again, but this time in confusion rather than anger. Delegates turned to each other, speaking in hushed tones that even the translators could not fully capture before Vryn could respond. Alarms blared throughout the chamber. The sound was so loud and urgent that even Foster flinched. Red lights flashed from every surface. A delegate burst through the entrance, moving so fast that its 6 legs scrambled for traction on the smooth floor. Foster recognized it as a Krolix, a species known for its calm demeanor and logical thinking. This Krolix looked terrified. High Chancellor. The Krolix's voice was high and panicked. Emergency transmission from the Outer Rim. The Devourers have returned? The chamber fell into instant chaos. Delegates shouted, screamed, and made sounds Foster had no names for. Some tried to flee. Others activated emergency shields around their viewing platforms. The fear was palpable, thick enough to feel. Foster had heard the name once during his diplomatic briefings. The Devourers. An ancient menace from before the Council was formed. Creatures that consumed entire worlds. They were supposed to be extinct, wiped out thousands of years ago. Vrin's energy form crackled and sparked. Where? The Talos system. The Kralix's voice broke. 3 inhabited planets. 12 billion citizens. They are already feeding. The holographic displays around Foster disappeared, replaced by live footage from the Talos system. What he saw made his blood run cold. Massive creatures descended from space, each one the size of Earth's moon. They were biomechanical nightmares, part organic and part machine, with surfaces that writhed and pulsed like living skin. They fell upon planets like locusts upon crops, and where they touched, everything died. The screams came through the audio system. 12 billion voices crying out in terror and pain. Then, one by one, they cut to static. 12 billion lives, gone in minutes. The chamber fell silent. Even the most aggressive delegates seemed stunned into stillness. Foster stepped forward. High Chancellor, perhaps we should postpone this trial. Vrin spun on him so fast that energy crackled in the air. This is your fault. Your species brought them here. The Devourers feed on violence, on conflict, on war. They are drawn to exactly what humanity represents. Maybe, Foster said calmly. Or maybe what you need right now is not another debate about protocols and peace accords? Maybe what you need is exactly what you fear most. Vrin's armor glowed brighter, anger and fear mixing in its energy form. Speak plainly, human. Foster met the High Chancellor's gaze without flinching. You need soldiers, High Chancellor. You need warriors. You need people who understand violence and know how to stop it. He paused. You need Earth Special Forces. Never! Thal shrieked, its orange eyes blazing. We would sooner face extinction than allow your death squads into our space. High Chancellor? A new voice cut through the chaos. It was old, ancient, and carried a weight that made every other delegate fall silent. The voice came from the eldest, a being so old that no one remembered its species' original name. It represented a civilization that had witnessed the birth of the Council itself. The eldest rarely spoke. When it did, the galaxy listened. Let them try. Vrin turned to face the eldest's viewing platform. You cannot be serious. These humans are primitives, barbarians. What could they possibly do against the Devourers? What we could not do when we faced them before, the eldest replied. What we have forgotten how to do. Let them try, Vrin. What do we have to lose that we have not already lost? The chamber buzzed with debate. Some delegates argued for giving humanity a chance. Others insisted it was suicide or worse, a trick. The arguing went on for what felt like hours. Finally, Vrin spoke. Very well. Ambassador Foster, you may contact your planet. But know this, if your special forces fail, if they make matters worse, humanity will face consequences beyond containment protocol. Do you understand? Foster nodded. Perfectly, High Chancellor. He activated his communication device, knowing that every delegate in the chamber was watching, listening, judging. The signal took several seconds to reach Earth. When the connection established, Foster spoke clearly. This is Ambassador Foster. We have a situation. Requesting immediate special forces deployment to the Talos system. Threat level, extinction. The response came back within minutes. Understood, Ambassador. SEAL, Team Phantom is wheels up in 30 minutes. Ada to Council Chamber, 6 hours. Foster closed the connection and looked up at Vrin. They are coming? One team? Thal screeched. You send one team against creatures that destroyed our fleets? One team, Foster confirmed. It will be enough. The chamber fell into an uneasy silence. Delegates whispered among themselves, speculating about what was coming. Some expected an army. Others predicted massive warships bristling with weapons. A few wondered if humans had developed some secret superweapon. Foster said nothing. He simply waited. 6 hours later, a small transport ship appeared outside the council chamber. It docked at the diplomatic port, and the chamber's sensors activated. Scanning the new arrivals, a delegate called out the readings. 6 life signs, human, no heavy weapons detected. No powered armor. No, the delegate paused, confused. No military equipment at all beyond standard kinetic firearms. 6? Thal repeated. 6 humans? The airlock opened. 6 people walked into the council chamber, and the galaxy got its first real look at Earth's special forces. They were not giants. They were not wearing power armor. They did not carry plasma weapons or energy shields. They wore simple combat uniforms in muted colors, carried rifles that used chemical propellants, and moved with a synchronized precision that made several species' defensive instincts activate. Leading them was a woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her eyes scanned the chamber with professional efficiency, taking in every delegate, every exit, every possible threat. When she spoke, her voice was steady and calm. Lieutenant Blah. SEAL Team Phantom. Where do you need us? The council chamber fell into stunned silence. 3,000 civilizations stared at the 6 humans who had just entered. Delegates whispered among themselves in thousands of languages. The translation devices buzzed with confused chatter. This is your response? Thal demanded, its chitinous body clicking with agitation. 6 primitives with chemical propellant weapons? This is humanity's great military force? Lieutenant Blake did not react to the insult. Her expression remained neutral, professional. She simply repeated her question. Where do you need us? High Chancellor Vryn floated down from his elevated platform, his energy form crackling with barely contained frustration. Perhaps Ambassador Foster was unclear. We face the Devourers, creatures that have destroyed 3 entire worlds in the past 6 hours, creatures that annihilated our battle fleets. And you send 6 soldiers with weapons that would be antiques in most civilized arsenals. Blake finally turned to look at Vryn. Her gaze was steady, unflinching. High Chancellor, with respect, if you had the weapons to stop the Devourers, you would have already done so. You called us because your way is not working. So I will ask one more time, where do you need us? A Kralik scientist named Rill stepped forward. Unlike Thal, Rill moved cautiously, curiosity rather than anger in its orange eyes. The Devourers are currently consuming the remains of the Talus system. Intelligence suggests their next target will be the Crest sector. 50 billion lives. How long do we have? Blake asked. 18 hours. Maybe less. Blake nodded once, then turned to her team. They moved closer, forming a tight circle, speaking in low voices that the chamber's audio systems could barely pick up. The conversation lasted less than 30 seconds. Then Blake turned back to the council. We need access to your intelligence archives. Everything you have on the Devourers. Biology, behavior, history, combat footage, anything and everything. Thal clicked its mandibles in what might have been laughter. You think you can learn in hours what we have studied for millennia? I think we can learn what you missed, Blake replied calmly. Vryn was silent for a long moment. Then he gestured to Rill. Show them to Archive Station 7. Give them whatever they request. The Kralik scientist led Blake's team out of the chamber. Foster watched them go, then turned to address the remaining delegates. I suggest you prepare for evacuation protocols in the Crest sector. If the humans fail, you will need to move those 50 billion people somewhere safe. And if they succeed? Asked a delegate that resembled a floating jellyfish. Foster smiled grimly. Then the galaxy is about to learn what humans mean by special forces. Archive Station 7 was a vast library of crystalline data storage, containing millions of years of accumulated knowledge. Rill led the human team to a private research chamber and activated the main console. What do you need first? Rill asked. Everything, Blake said. She gestured to her team. They moved with practiced efficiency, each taking a different station. Start with biological data. How do they eat? How do they reproduce? What are their life cycles? Rill's eyes flickered with surprise. You want to study their biology? Should you not focus on their weapons? Their tactics? Those too, Blake confirmed. But first, biology. Every living thing has weaknesses. We just need to find theirs. For the next 12 hours, the humans did not rest. They consumed data at a pace that left Rill amazed. Not just battle reports, but everything. Devourer anatomy. Devourer psychology. Ancient texts about their culture before they became the monsters they were now. Migration patterns. Feeding behaviors. Even their mythology. Rill watched in fascination as Blake's team worked. They did not just read the data. They discussed it, debated it, connected information in ways the Kralik scientist had never considered. Here, said one of Blake's team, a man named Marcus. Look at this migration pattern from 3,000 years ago. The Devourers were moving through the outer rim, consuming everything. Then they suddenly stopped. They fled the galaxy entirely. Another team member, a woman named Kira, pulled up additional data. What made them flee? The Council's records show no major military victory. No superweapon. They just left. Blake leaned forward, studying the data intently. What else happened during that time period? Any unusual events? Rill accessed the historical archives, sorting through thousands of records. Then something caught its attention. There was a coalition formed. 7 species from the outer rim banded together to resist the Devourers. They did not have superior weapons, but they coordinated their efforts. They used guerrilla tactics. They turned their home territories into traps. They fought smart, Blake said softly. Not harder? Kira pulled up more data. The Devourers stopped feeding in that region. They avoided it entirely for several months before leaving the galaxy. Why would apex predators avoid prey that was fighting back? Marcus leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant. Because they were not just prey anymore. They were a threat. Blake stood up suddenly, her eyes bright with understanding. Rill, can you access the Devourer's genetic memory? The Kralik scientist's eyes widened. That is theoretical. We believe the Devourers carry ancestral memories in their DNA, but we have never been able to confirm it. But it is possible? Theoretically, yes. But you would need to access a Devourer's neural core. That would require getting inside one of their ships. Blake smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had just solved a difficult puzzle. Then that is what we will do. That is suicide. Rill exclaimed. The Devourer's internal defense systems have killed every probe we have sent. No living being has ever entered one and survived. No one from the Galactic Council has survived, Blake corrected. But the Council has never sent anyone like us. She turned to her team. We have 6 hours before the Devourers reach the crest sector. That gives us time for insertion and infiltration. Marcus, Kira, you are with me. Reed, Takeshi, and Liu, you 3 will provide external support and extraction. The team member named Reed frowned. Lieutenant, the odds of successful extraction are less than 5%. Then we better be in that 5%, Blake replied calmly. Rill, we need a stealth ship. Something that can get us close without being detected. Rill hesitated. I do not have the authority to approve this mission. Then find someone who does. Time is running out. 20 minutes later, Blake's plan was presented to the council chamber. The reaction was immediate and loud. This is madness, Thal shrieked. You want to willingly enter a Devourer ship? Yes, Blake confirmed. Why? Vryn demanded. What could possibly be gained? Blake activated a holographic display showing the data her team had compiled. The Devourers left this galaxy 3,000 years ago because something made them afraid. That fear is locked in their genetic memory. If we can access it, if we can trigger it, we can make them leave again. And you think 3 humans can accomplish what our entire civilization could not? Thal scoffed. I think 3 humans can do what your civilization has forgotten how to do, Blake replied. We can be patient. We can be quiet. We can make them afraid. The eldest ancient voice cut through the debate. The human speaks of fear as a weapon. Interesting. The devourers use fear to paralyze their prey. Perhaps it is time they learned what it feels like to be the one who is afraid. Vrin's energy form flickered uncertainly. And if you fail? If you die inside their ship? Then you are no worse off than you are now, Blake said. But if we succeed, you save 50 billion lives. That seems like acceptable odds to me. The vote was quick. The council approved the mission by a narrow margin. Many delegates clearly believed they were sending the humans to their deaths, but desperation won over caution. Rill provided the stealth ship, a sleek vessel designed for reconnaissance. Blake and her 2 team members boarded while the other 3 prepared for external support. Foster came to see them off. Lieutenant, you do not have to do this. There must be another way. Blake secured her equipment, checking each piece methodically. Ambassador, with respect, there is not. The Council builds weapons. We build warriors. There is a difference. We are trained for situations exactly like this. Situations where you might die. Situations where dying might be necessary to save others. Blake met his eyes. That is what Special Forces means, Ambassador. It means being willing to go where others cannot. To do what others will not. Foster nodded slowly. Then good luck, Lieutenant. Luck is for amateurs, sir. Blake smiled slightly. We are professionals. The stealth ship launched, accelerating toward the Devourer swarm. Inside the council chamber, thousands of delegates watched through remote viewing systems. The tension was thick enough to cut. The journey took 2 hours. 2 hours of silent approach, using every stealth technology the council possessed. The Devourers drifted through space like sleeping giants, their massive biomechanical forms blocking out stars. Blake's voice came through the communication system, calm and focused. We are approaching the target, preparing for EVA insertion. Rill watched the sensor displays with growing amazement. The 3 humans left their ship, floating through space with nothing but simple thruster packs and magnetic grapples. They moved slowly, patiently, taking advantage of sensor blind spots and power fluctuations in the Devourer's hull. How are they doing this? Rill why? Spared. Our best infiltration teams could not get within 1,000 kilometers without detection. Foster watched the display with a small smile. They are doing what humans have done for thousands of years, Rill. They are hunting. The 3 humans reached the Devourer's hull. The organic surface writhed with sensory organs and defensive systems. Blake and her team moved between them like ghosts. Their movements small and precise, they found an access port, a small opening designed for waste ejection. Blake used a cutting tool to widen it just enough for a human body to fit through. One by one, they slipped inside. The communication signal weakened but did not disappear entirely. Blake's voice crackled through the static. We are in. Beginning infiltration toward the neural core. Going radio silent for operational security. The transmission cut off. In the council chamber, thousands of delegates stared at the now empty displays. All they could do was wait. Thal turned to Foster. They are dead. You know that, do you not? Foster kept watching the displays, his expression unreadable. We will see. The inside of the Devourer was a nightmare made real. Organic corridors pulsed with bioluminescent light. The walls were not walls, but living tissue that breathed and moved. The air was thick with moisture and the smell of something ancient and wrong. Blake moved through the corridors with Marcus and Kira close behind. They kept their movements small and deliberate. Their boots made no sound on the soft floor. Their breathing was controlled and quiet. Every few meters they stopped to listen, to observe, to learn. In the council chamber, Rill stared at the empty displays. We have lost all signal. The Devourer's organic matter must be blocking transmissions. How long before we know if they succeeded? Vrin asked. If they succeed, we will know when the Devourers change behavior. If they fail. Doug quotes Rill trailed off. If they fail, the Crest sector dies in 4 hours. Thal finished coldly. Foster stood silent, watching the displays as if he could will them to show something, anything. He had sent people into danger before, but never like this. Never with so much at stake. Inside the Devourer, Blake's team pressed deeper. They navigated by instinct and training, following the flow of organic fluids through pulsing veins in the walls. The neural core would be at the center, where all the biological systems connected. Kira held up her fist, the signal to stop. Something moved in the corridor ahead. Blake signaled for her team to press against the walls, to become part of the shadows. A creature emerged from the darkness. It was one of the Devourer's internal defense organisms, a hunter-killer designed to eliminate foreign bodies. It looked like a cross between a spider and a shark. All teeth and claws and hungry eyes. The creature moved past them, its sensors sweeping the corridor. Blake and her team remained absolutely still. They did not breathe. They did not move. They became stone. The creature paused. Its sensors flickered over where the humans hid. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the creature moved on, disappearing into another corridor. Kira let out a slow, controlled breath. Marcus gave a thumbs up. Blake signaled to continue forward. They moved for what felt like hours through the living ship. The deeper they went, the more active the internal systems became. Fluids pumped faster. The walls contracted and expanded like breathing lungs. The temperature rose until sweat dripped down their faces. Finally, they found it. The neural core was a massive chamber filled with pulsing organic structures that glowed with an eerie blue light. Tendrils of living tissue connected to every part of the ship, carrying information and commands. At the center was the memory core, a crystalline structure embedded in living flesh. "This is it," Blake whispered. Marcus set up the interface. "Kira, watch our backs." Marcus moved to the memory core, pulling out a device that looked primitive compared to the organic technology surrounding them. But it would work. It had to work. He attached the device to the crystalline surface and activated it. Data began flowing immediately, too fast for human eyes to read. The device translated the genetic information into something their computers could analyze. "I am in," Marcus reported quietly. "Searching for ancestral memory patterns related to fear response." The minutes ticked by. Blake watched the entrance to the chamber while Kira monitored the corridors behind them. The Devourer continued its normal functions, unaware of the intruders in its brain. Then Marcus found something. "Blake, you need to see this." She moved to his position, looking at the display. What she saw made her blood run cold. The Devourer's ancestral memory contained a record of their flight from the galaxy. But it was not a military defeat that drove them away. It was something more primal. They had encountered species that fought back not with bigger weapons, but with intelligence, with coordination, with a refusal to give up no matter how outmatched they were. The Devourers fed on fear. They consumed prey that panicked and scattered. But when they encountered prey that stood together, that planned and adapted, that turned every defeat into a lesson for the next fight, something in their genetic programming triggered a deep, instinctive terror. "They are afraid of persistence," Kira whispered, reading over Blake's shoulder. "Not strength, persistence." Blake nodded slowly. "They evolved to hunt prey that runs. When prey stops running, when it starts hunting back, they do not know how to process that. It breaks something fundamental in their psychology. So how do we trigger that response?" Marcus asked. Blake thought for a moment, then smiled grimly. "We make them feel hunted. Inside their own body." She explained the plan quickly. It was insane. It was dangerous. But it might work. Marcus programmed the interface to send false signals through the Devourer's neural network. Signals that would make it believe something was wrong. Something was inside it. Something was hunting it. He activated the program. At first, nothing happened. Then the chamber began to shudder. The walls contracted violently. The bioluminescent light flickered and changed colors. "We need to move," Blake ordered. Now, they grabbed their equipment and ran. Behind them, the Devourer's neural core pulsed with confused signals. The ship was trying to understand what was wrong, why it suddenly felt threatened from the inside. Alarms began to sound. Not mechanical, but organic. a deep howling that came from the walls themselves. The hunter-killer organisms. Activated throughout the ship, Blake's team sprinted through the corridors as shapes emerged from the darkness. Creatures with too many teeth and claws. Things that should not exist outside of nightmares. Contact rear. Kira shouted, firing her weapon. The kinetic rounds tore through one of the creatures, dropping it. More came. Too many. They filled the corridor behind the team. A wave of teeth and claws and hunger. Blake grabbed a device from her belt and threw it behind them. Down! The team dropped flat as the device detonated. It was not an explosive. It was a chemical dispersal unit, flooding the corridor with a cocktail of compounds they had synthesized from the research data. The hunter-killers stopped. They began attacking each other, their sensors confused by the chemicals. The Devourer's own immune system turned against itself. Move! Blake ordered. They ran while behind them. Chaos erupted. The ship's systems were fighting themselves, trying to eliminate threats that were not there, creating more problems with every failed solution. In the council chamber, the displays suddenly came back online. Sensor data showed the Devourer's internal systems going haywire. Life signs fluctuated wildly. Power readings spiked and dropped randomly. What is happening? Thal demanded. Real studied the data, its eyes wide. The Devourer is attacking itself. Its immune system has gone into overdrive. It thinks it has been invaded by a massive hostile force. But there are only 3 humans in there, Vryn said. The Devourer does not know that, Foster replied, understanding dawning. They made it afraid. Not of what they are, but of what the Devourer thinks they might be. Inside the ship, Blake and her team reached the waste ejection port they had used to enter. Behind them, the sounds of biological warfare echoed through the corridors. The ship was tearing itself apart. Extraction team, we need pickup now. Blake transmitted. Reed's voice came back immediately. On our way, Lieutenant. ETA 30 seconds. They climbed out onto the hull just as the stealth ship appeared. Magnetic grapples shot out, catching them and pulling them toward safety. Below them, the Devourer's surface rippled and convulsed. As soon as they were aboard, the stealth ship accelerated away. Blake moved to the communication station and sent a wide-spectrum transmission directly into the Devourer's neural network. It was not words. It was a frequency pattern derived from the ancient genetic memory. The same pattern that had made the Devourers flee millennia ago. The sound of prey that refused to be prey. The sound of something that hunted back. The effect was immediate. The Devourer stopped moving. Its surface stilled. Then slowly it began to turn away from the crest sector. It is working, Rill breathed in the council chamber. The Devourer is changing course. But it was not just one. On the displays, every Devourer in the region began to respond to the transmitted signal. The frequency triggered something deep in their genetic programming. Ancient fear. Instinctive terror. One by one, the massive creatures turned and began moving away from inhabited space. They moved faster and faster, fleeing from a threat they could feel but not see. The council chamber erupted in sound. Delegates who had been certain of humanity's failure now celebrated. Even Thal was silent, its orange eyes fixed on the displays. Blake's team returned to the council chamber 3 hours later. They looked exhausted, their uniforms stained and damaged, but they were alive. Vryn floated down to meet them. You succeeded. Against all probability, you succeeded, Blake nodded tiredly. We did what we were trained to do, High Chancellor. You made them afraid, the eldest ancient voice observed. Not with weapons. Not with force, with understanding. You studied them, learned them, and turned their own nature against them. That is what special forces means, Blake explained. It is not about being the strongest or having the best weapons. It is about being adaptable. About finding solutions others miss, about persistence. Thal stepped forward, and for the first time, its voice held something other than contempt. I was wrong about you, human. I thought you were simple soldiers. But you are something more. We are what happens when a species spends thousands of years learning to survive impossible odds, Marcus said. Every predator on Earth tried to kill us. Every environment tried to stop us. We learn to think our way through problems instead of just fighting through them. Kira added, and we learn that fear is just information. The Devourers used fear as a weapon because they never experienced it themselves. Once we understood that, the rest was simple. Simple, Vryn repeated, its energy form flickering with something that might have been amusement. You call infiltrating a Devourer ship, hacking its neural core, and triggering an exodus of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy simple? Blake smiled slightly. Compared to some of our training exercises? Yes, High Chancellor. This was actually relatively straightforward. The council chamber fell silent. Then, slowly, something unprecedented happened. One delegate began to make a sound. Others joined. Soon, thousands of species were creating their versions of applause, celebration, and respect. Blake and her team stood at attention, accepting the acknowledgement with quiet professionalism. Foster approached, pride evident on his face. Well done, Lieutenant. Thank you, Ambassador. Blake lowered her voice. But this is not over. The Devourers will return eventually. Fear only works temporarily. The galaxy needs to be ready. What do you suggest? Blake looked out at the assembled delegates. I suggest we teach them. Show them what humans learned through thousands of years of survival. The galaxy has forgotten how to be warriors. Maybe it is time they remembered. The proposal came 3 days after the Devourers fled. Ambassador Foster stood before the full council with Lieutenant Blake at his side. The chamber was packed. Every delegate wanted to hear what humanity would say next. The Devourers will return, Foster began without preamble. Perhaps not tomorrow, perhaps not for years. But they will return. Fear fades, memory weakens. When they come back, they will be ready for the tactics we used. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Vryn raised a hand for silence. What do you propose, Ambassador? I propose that we prepare, not with new weapons or bigger fleets, with people. With training, with knowledge? Thal clicked its mandibles skeptically. You want to militarize the council? We abandoned warfare millennia ago for good reason. I want to educate the council, Foster corrected. There is a difference between being peaceful and being defenseless. Right now, you are defenseless. The moment the Devourers return or any other threat appears, you will be helpless again. Blake stepped forward. High Chancellor, may I speak? Vryn gestured assent. You have earned that right, Lieutenant. The galaxy sees Earth's military history and assumes we love war. You are wrong, we hate war. But we understand something you have forgotten. Peace must be protected. It does not protect itself. She activated a holographic display showing human history. Not the wars, but what came after, rebuilding, recovery. The long periods of peace between conflicts. Humans fight when we must. But we spend far more time preparing so that we never have to fight. That is what Special Forces really means. We train for years, for decades, hoping we will never need to use that training. But when the moment comes, we are ready. A delegate that resembled a floating crystal spoke up. You want to train our species in human combat methods? I want to train your species in human survival methods, Blake corrected. How to think under pressure. How to adapt to impossible situations. How to turn weaknesses into strengths. How to persist when everything says to give up. That sounds like military training, Thal observed. It sounds like life training, Marcus interjected from where he stood with the rest of Phantom Team. Everything we learn in Special Forces applies to civilian life, problem-solving, teamwork, resilience, the ability to stay calm when everything is going wrong. Kira added, the weapons are the smallest part of what we do. The real weapon is the mind. A trained mind can solve problems that no weapon can fix. Rill, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. I watched these humans work. They did not succeed because they were strong or because they had advanced technology. They succeeded because they thought differently. They saw patterns we missed. They found solutions in places we did not think to look. Because we were trained to do that, Blake explained. Human Special Forces selection is not about physical strength. It is about mental toughness. About creativity under pressure. About the refusal to quit even when quitting would be easier. The eldest ancient voice filled the chamber. The human speaks wisdom. We built this council on the principle that violence is primitive. But perhaps we confused violence with preparedness. Perhaps we threw away the knife and forgot how to defend ourselves. Vryn was quiet for a long moment. What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador Foster? Foster pulled up detailed schematics on the holographic display. A training facility. Located on Earth initially, with satellite campuses throughout Council space eventually, any species can send candidates. We will teach them human methods. Not to create soldiers, but to create protectors. And who decides who gets this training? Thal asked suspiciously. You do, Foster replied. The Council approves all candidates. We just provide the instruction. What makes you think your methods will work for a non-human species? Another delegate questioned. Our biology, our psychology, everything is different. Blake smiled. That is exactly why it will work. The core principles of Special Forces training are not about human biology. They are about universal truths. Every species faces fear. Every species can learn to overcome it. Every species has the capacity for courage and persistence. She gestured to her team. We have already started working with Rill, a Kralik scientist who has never seen combat. In 3 days, we taught basic situational awareness, threat assessment, and stress management. Rill survived a Devourer attack using those skills. Rill stepped forward, its orange eyes bright. It is true. The humans showed me how to observe my environment differently. How to identify exits and threats without conscious thought. How to remain calm when my instincts scream to panic. These skills saved my life. One scientist is not proof, Full argued. Then let us prove it, Foster challenged. Give us volunteers from different species. Let us run a trial program. 6 months. If it works, we expand. If it fails, we stop. The debate raged for hours. Some delegates feared creating a new warrior class. Others worried about the cultural impact on peaceful societies. But slowly, gradually, a consensus formed. The vote was close, but it passed. Earth would establish the Galactic Training Initiative. Volunteers from any council species could apply. The program would focus on mental resilience, tactical thinking, and survival skills. But, Vryn added firmly, there will be oversight. Council observers will monitor all training. Any sign that this becomes a militarization program and it ends immediately. Foster nodded, agreed. Transparency is essential. The first class would begin in 3 months. In the meantime, Blake and her team returned to Earth to prepare the curriculum and facilities on the flight home. Marcus looked at his lieutenant with concern. Blake, do you really think this will work? Teaching aliens to think like humans? I think we have to try, Blake replied, staring out at the stars. The galaxy has been at peace for so long, they forgot that peace is not the natural state of the universe. Entropy, chaos, violence, these are the defaults. Peace requires constant effort. Kira leaned back in her seat. The hard part will not be the physical training. It will be changing how they think. The council species have spent thousands of years believing that violence is always wrong, that conflict is always bad. We need to teach them nuance. That there is a difference between aggression and defense, Marcus agreed. Between attacking and protecting, Blake nodded. Exactly. And that the willingness to fight does not mean the desire to fight. 3 months later, the first class arrived on Earth. 50 candidates from 20 different species. They came from all backgrounds, scientists, diplomats, engineers, artists. None of them were soldiers. They gathered in a training facility built in the mountains of Colorado. The environment was deliberately harsh. Thin air, extreme temperature swings. Difficult terrain. Blake addressed them on the first day. Welcome to Earth. This planet will try to kill you. Not because it hates you, but because it does not care about you. Earth is a hostile world. Humans survived hereby. Learning to adapt. That is what you will learn. A delegate from a water world species looked nervous. We were told this would be mental training. Not physical. It is both, Blake explained. You cannot separate the mind from the body. Physical stress reveals mental strength. You will learn your limits, then you will learn to push past them. The training was brutal, not because it was designed to be cruel, but because it was designed to be real. The candidates learned to move through forests without being seen, to build shelter from basic materials, to find water and food in hostile environments, but more importantly, they learned to think. Blake's team presented them with impossible scenarios. No-win situations. Problems with no obvious solutions. The point was not to find the right answer, because often there was no right answer. The point was to keep trying anyway. A delegate named Torvin, from a species of methane-breathing insectoids, struggled with a navigation exercise. Lost in the wilderness with no equipment, Torvin panicked initially. But then, remembering the lessons, Torvin stopped, breathed, observed, used the position of the sun and the growth patterns of plants to determine direction. Good, Blake said when Torvin finally found the way back. You did not quit. That is the first lesson. Weeks passed. The candidates grew stronger, but more importantly, they grew more confident. They learned that fear was not the enemy. Panic was the enemy. Fear could be acknowledged and then set aside. Rill, who had volunteered to participate despite being a scientist rather than a warrior, excelled at the mental challenges. It makes sense now, Rill told Blake one evening. Special Forces is not about being fearless. It is about acting despite fear. Exactly, Blake confirmed. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is doing what needs to be done even when you are terrified. The council observers watched everything. Some were impressed. Others remained skeptical. But none could deny that the candidates were changing. They moved differently, thought differently, faced challenges with a resilience they had not possessed before. Halfway through the program, Blake introduced the final lesson. The one that would determine if the program was truly successful. Tomorrow, she announced to the assembled class, you will face the Crucible. What is the Crucible? Torvin asked. Blake smiled. You will find out. Get some rest. You will need it. The next morning, the candidates were transported to a remote location. They were given minimal equipment and a simple mission: survive and reach the extraction point 70 kilometers away. They had 48 hours, but there was a twist. Blake's team would be hunting them. Phantom Team and other Special Forces units would be actively trying to capture the candidates using non-lethal methods. This is not fair. One candidate protested. No, Blake agreed. It is not. Life is not fair. Threats do not wait for you to be ready. Now move out? The Crucible was chaos. The candidates scattered, using everything they had learned. Some were captured quickly, overwhelmed by experienced human operators. But others adapted. They worked together. They used the terrain. They thought creatively. Rill's group found a river and used it to mask their movement. Torvin's team created false trails to mislead pursuers. A delegate named Myra, from a species with natural camouflage, taught others how to stay still and blend with their surroundings. When the 48 hours ended, 32 of the 50 candidates reached the extraction point. Not perfect, but far better than the council observers expected. Blake addressed the exhausted but triumphant class. You survived. But more than that, you adapted. You worked together despite coming from different worlds. You thought your way through problems? That is what I wanted to see. In the council chamber, Vryn watched the after-action reports with something approaching amazement. They succeeded. Against trained human special forces, the civilians succeeded. Not all of them, Thal observed. But more than half, the eldest countered. More than half refused to quit. That is significant. Foster smiled. The question is not whether some failed. The question is whether they learned. And I believe they did. Vryn made a decision. Expand the program. More classes. More species. If this is what humanity can teach us, then we must learn. Back on Earth, Blake watched the candidates celebrate their survival. Marcus came to stand beside her. Think it will make a difference? He asked. Blake nodded slowly. When the Devourers return, or when the next threat appears, these people will not freeze. They will not panic. They will remember what they learned here. And maybe, just maybe, that will be enough. 2 years passed. The Galactic Training Initiative expanded beyond anything Ambassador Foster had imagined. What started as 50 volunteers became 500, then 5,000. Species from across the Council sent their best candidates to learn from humanity. Training facilities opened on 12 different worlds, each adapted to local conditions but all teaching the same core principles: mental resilience, tactical thinking, the refusal to quit. But not everyone was happy about the changes. In the council chamber, a faction of delegates had grown increasingly vocal in their opposition. They were led by a new delegate named Corvus, representing a species called the Harmony. The Harmony were telepathic beings who had not experienced violence in 3,000 years. "This militarization must end," Corvus declared during a session. "We see it in our graduates. They return home changed, harder, more aggressive. The humans are not teaching survival. They are teaching warfare." Foster stood to respond, but Lieutenant Blake, who was now Director Blake of the Galactic Training Initiative, spoke first. "Delegate Corvus, have any of your graduates committed acts of violence?" "No, but have they started conflicts or shown increased aggression toward others?" "Not directly, but their mindset has changed," Blake agreed. "They are more confident, more capable. They question authority when that authority is wrong. That is not aggression. That is independence." Corvus's telepathic field rippled with frustration. "You are changing the fundamental nature of our civilizations. We chose peace. We chose harmony. You are teaching us to embrace conflict." "I am teaching you to survive conflict when it finds you," Blake corrected. "Peace is not a choice you make once and forget. Peace is a choice you defend every day." The debate was interrupted by alarms. Not the soft chimes of a routine alert, but the harsh blaring that indicated emergency. Delegates looked around in confusion and fear. High Chancellor Vrin's energy form blazed brightly. "Report!" a panicked voice came through the communication system. "High Chancellor, we have multiple contacts emerging from dark space. Unknown vessels. They are attacking colony worlds on the outer rim." The holographic displays activated, showing the attacks. These were not devourers. These were ships, mechanical, organized, and they were destroying everything in their path. "Who are they?" Vrin demanded. "Unknown. They have not responded to any hails. They are simply attacking." The council erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted questions and demands. Some called for immediate military response. Others insisted on diplomatic solutions. Blake watched the displays with professional calm. Then she turned to Foster. "We need to deploy graduates. Now." "The Council has not authorized," Foster began. "Then get authorization." Blake snapped, her usual composure cracking. "People are dying right now." Vrin made the decision. "All Training Initiative graduates are hereby activated. Director Blake, coordinate the response." Blake moved immediately, opening communication channels to graduates across Council space. "This is Director Blake, emergency activation. All graduates report to your designated command centers." This is not a drill. The response was immediate. 5,000 graduates, representing dozens of species, began mobilizing. Not as armies, but as organized response teams. Rill, who had graduated top of the first class and was now an instructor, coordinated from the council chamber. "We have teams responding across 7 sectors. They are evacuating civilians and establishing defensive positions." On the viewing screens, the results were visible. Where untrained populations panicked and scattered, the graduates moved with purpose. They organized evacuations. They set up triage centers. They turned civilian structures into temporary fortifications, but the attacking ships kept coming. Hundreds of them, pouring out of dark space like a swarm. "We need to identify their origin," Blake said. "Find out where they are coming from." Marcus, who had been analyzing the attack patterns, spoke up. "They are emerging from a specific region of space. Coordinates suggest an origin point in the dead zone." The dead zone was a region of space that even the Council avoided. It was where stars went to die, where black holes and radiation made navigation impossible. Nothing lived there, nothing should live there. We need eyes on that location, Blake said. Phantom Team, you are up. Her original team had stayed together, now serving as elite troubleshooters for the initiative. They boarded a stealth ship and accelerated toward the dead zone. While the battle raged across multiple star systems, the journey took 6 hours. When they arrived, what they found was staggering. A massive structure hung in the void, larger than any space station the Council had ever built. It was ancient, covered in damage from thousands of years of radiation exposure. And it was launching ships. "This is Phantom Team to Council Chamber," Blake transmitted. "We have found the source. It is not an invasion. Force, it is an automated defense system. Something woke it up." Vrin's voice crackled through the communication system. "Defense system? Defending what? Unknown. But based on the design, this structure is at least 10,000 years old." "Possibly older." Blake studied the sensor data. The structure was launching ships in response to something. But what? Then she saw it. The trajectory of Council ships over the past 2 years. New exploration routes? New colonies? All of them pushing closer to the dead zone. "We triggered it," she realized. "The Council's expansion into previously unexplored space. The system thinks we are invading." "Then how do we stop it?" Vrin demanded. Blake thought quickly. "We talk to it. Or we make it think the threat is gone. Or we shut it down." "Director Blake, that structure has been launching ships for hours," Corvus interrupted. "Our casualties are already in the thousands. We do not have time for diplomatic solutions." "Then we shut it down," Blake decided. "Phantom Team, prepare for insertion." The plan was similar to the Devourer operation, but more dangerous. The structure was not organic. It would have mechanical defenses, artificial intelligence, and security systems that had been active for millennia. But Blake's team had trained for this. They had taught this. Now it was time to prove that the lessons worked. They infiltrated the structure through a damaged section of hull. Inside, they found corridors of metal and crystal, all humming with ancient power. Automated defenses activated immediately, but Blake's team was ready. They moved like water, flowing around threats, using cover, thinking 3 steps ahead. Every lesson they had taught to 5,000 graduates they used now. They reached the central control chamber. It was a vast space filled with holographic displays and control systems beyond human understanding. But at the center was something they could understand, a command core. "If we shut this down, does the entire system deactivate?" Kira asked. "Only one way to find out," Marcus replied. Blake approached the command core carefully. It was protected by energy shields and automated defenses, but she noticed something. The defenses were designed to stop external threats, not someone who was already inside. "It is like the Devourers," she realized. The best defenses protect against outside attacks, but they do not expect infiltration. She pulled out a device her team had developed during training. A simple electromagnetic pulse generator, nothing sophisticated. Human technology, basic and reliable. She activated it. The pulse spread through the control chamber, disrupting the holographic displays and causing the automated defenses to stutter. In that moment of confusion, Marcus reached the command core and interfaced with it using a universal translator. The code was ancient, but logic was logic. He found the shutdown sequence and initiated it. The structure shuddered. Power began cycling down. The ships it had launched stopped their attacks and went dormant across Council space. The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. In the Council chamber, delegates stared at the displays in shock. Vrin's energy form flickered with exhaustion and relief. "They did it. 3 humans shut down a system that would have destroyed us all." "Not just 3 humans," Rill corrected. 5,000 graduates held the line while they worked. The evacuations, the defensive positions, the civilian rescue operations. All of it was coordinated by people who learned from humans. Corvus was silent, its telepathic field subdued. When Phantom Team returned, Blake addressed the full council one final time. "You asked if we were militarizing your civilization. The answer is no. We are not creating warriors. We are creating survivors. People who can think under pressure, who can adapt to the unexpected, who refuse to give up even when everything looks hopeless. She gestured to the displays showing the aftermath of the attack. Your graduates saved millions of lives today, not by fighting, but by thinking, by staying calm when others panicked, by remembering their training and applying it to a situation we never specifically prepared them for. That is what Special Forces means, Foster added, standing beside Blake. It is not about the force you use. It is about the special quality of the people, their ability to face the impossible and find a way through. Vryn floated down to their level. Director Blake, Ambassador Foster, humanity has taught us a valuable lesson. We thought we could have peace by forgetting how to fight. But you showed, U.S., that true peace comes from being ready to protect it. The eldest spoke, its ancient voice carrying wisdom. The galaxy feared humans because we did not understand them. We saw their history of conflict and assumed they loved violence. But now we see the truth. Humans understand that peace and preparation are not opposites. They are partners, a vote was called. This time, there was no debate. The Galactic Training Initiative would continue and expand. Every council species would be encouraged to participate. The program would be formalized as the Galactic Defense Education Program. But more than that, Earth was given a new role in the Council. Guardian species. Not because humans would fight the galaxy's battles, but because they would teach the galaxy to fight its own battles. In the weeks that followed, Blake stood at the training facility in Colorado, watching a new class arrive. They came from species across the galaxy, scientists, artists, teachers, regular, people who wanted to learn how to be ready. Marcus joined her, looking at the nervous candidates. Think we can teach them? Blake smiled. We already have. Every graduate out there is teaching others what they learned. The knowledge spreads, the mindset spreads. That is the real power of what we do. Kira approached with a datapad. Director, we have requests for 10 more training facilities. Demand is higher than ever. Then we will build them, Blake said simply. On Earth, Foster met with Vryn in a private chamber. The High Chancellor had come to see humanity's homeworld for himself. Your planet is hostile, Vryn observed, watching a thunderstorm roll across the mountains. Violent weather. Dangerous animals. Seismic instability. How did your species survive? By adapting, Foster replied. By learning. By never giving up, no matter how hard things got. That is what we pass on now. Not our violence, but our persistence. Vryn was silent for a moment. Then his energy form pulsed with something that might have been respect. I understand now. Your species' greatest weapon is not your soldiers or your technology, it is your philosophy. The belief that anything can be overcome with enough determination and creativity. That is what we want to share with the galaxy, Foster confirmed. The idea that no threat is insurmountable. That preparation and training can make the difference between survival and extinction. And what if some species use this training? For aggression? For conquest? Then we will deal with it, Foster said firmly. But we will deal with it together, as a prepared and ready galaxy. Not as a defenseless one that can only watch as threats destroy us. Vryn nodded slowly. The galaxy feared humans. But perhaps what we really feared was our own forgotten strength. You reminded us that we were once survivors too. The final scene showed the training grounds at sunset. 5,000 graduates had become 50,000, and the number kept growing. Each one learning the lessons Earth had learned through millennia of survival. Not how to make war, but how to make peace last. Blake stood before the newest class, her voice carrying the same calm authority it always had. Welcome to Earth. This planet survived ice ages, meteor strikes, supervolcanoes, and the most dangerous predator of all, humanity itself. We learned to adapt or die. For the next 6 months, you will learn the same lesson. She paused, looking at each candidate. The galaxy is not a safe place. Threats will come. Some we can see, some we cannot. But when they arrive, you will be ready. Not because you are warriors, but because you are prepared. Not because you love conflict, but because you refuse to let conflict destroy what you love. A candidate raised a hand nervously. Director Blake, what if we fail? What if we are not strong enough? Blake's expression softened slightly. Strength is not about muscles or weapons. Strength is getting back up every time you fall. Strength is trying again when every attempt has failed. Strength is standing between danger and innocence even when you are terrified. She looked out at the assembled candidates, seeing not soldiers but protectors, not warriors but guardians. You are already strong enough. You just do not know it yet. That is what we are here to teach you. High above Earth, a new symbol appeared alongside the flags of 3,000 species in the council chamber. Earth's emblem, simple and clear, with words written beneath in every galactic language: adapt, overcome, survive. The galaxy had feared humans. Then they met special forces, and learned that the most dangerous thing about humanity was not their capacity for violence, but their refusal to surrender. Their absolute, stubborn determination to find a way forward no matter what stood in their path. That was the gift Earth gave to the galaxy. Not weapons, not armies, but the knowledge that preparation, persistence, and courage could overcome any obstacle in the galaxy. Once terrified of humanity's violent past, now look to humanity's resilient spirit as a guide for the future. The story of Earth and the Galactic Council was not about conquest or domination. It was about a species that learned to survive on a hostile world, teaching other species that same lesson. That peace was not weakness. That preparation was not aggression. That the willingness to fight and the wisdom to avoid fighting were not contradictions. They were two sides of the same coin. The coin that humanity had spent thousands of years earning, and now, that coin bought the galaxy a chance at a safer, stronger future.